So I'm going to create a lightning curve. I'm going to invert it and I'm going to call it dodge, and a darkening curve. And I'm going to pull the white point down slightly, add some red to the highlight to the whites, and subtract some blue from the whites, just so that I can address highlights without them going grey. And I'm going to just darken that down a bit more. I'm going to call this burn. I'm going to invert it. I'm just going to add a helping layer as well. So I'm going to go and I'm going to add a new layer and press Command and Option. And then I'm going to go to Soft Light, fill with Soft Light Neutral Gray, and I'm calling this Check. And I'm just going to pull this above my overall curves and I'm going to put it to color. Then I'm also going to get a curve, which I'm going to just put a slight darken on to help me see a little bit better as well. I'm going to be taking this on and off whilst retouching. It'll just help me to see a little bit clearer what's going on. And now I'm going to go around the image and give it a very light dodge and burn. Great, and I think I'm going to stop there. I'm just going to now group these two into a dodge and burn group, and then I'm going to group the clothes into a larger dodge and burn group. I'm also going to label this layer check as well, and I'm going to group them into a help check group. And I'm going to take the help check group off. And as you can see, with the dodge and burn, it's just a light dodge and burn. You don't want to go as far as you'd go with a beauty image. You want to keep it very natural, very, very subtle, and keep all of the original features there. Then I'm also going to get the dodge and burn and the pixel work, and I'm going to group it and call it RT. And I would usually have done the masking of the image before I did the dodge and burn, but in this case we're going to do it now. It's always a good idea to create some masks early on, as soon as the shape of the image is set and the hair edge is not going to change. Just depending on the needs of your image, you will know what you need to mask. I generally think of this as good file prep. In this image, I know that I'm going to need to mask the foreground or background, the skin, the hair, and the top. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my pen tool, and I'm going to mask out this image quickly. Great, so I've got my model path and my top path. I'm now going to do a channel mask for the hair quick. And I'm just going to duplicate that blue channel, and I'm going to press Command M, and I'm going to increase the contrast in the image. Great. And then I'm going to get the dodge tool. I'm going to lower the exposure on that. And then I'm going to get the burn tool and just burn down the hair. And I'm going to get the lasso tool and just go around, and then Command Shift I, zoom out, and I'm just going to paint this. I'm going to just set my brush to 100% and just quickly paint this out. I'm going to deselect that, and I'm just going to make this edge between the hair and the skin nice and soft. Something like that. Great, so we've got our hair mask, and I'm going to Command I that. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to get my model path, and I'm going to Command and Shift and click on the hair mask as well, and I'm going to go Select, Save Selection. I'm going to label this foreground and just make sure that I'm saving the selection as a new channel. I'm going to deselect that. I'm just going to clean up anything that needs to be cleaned up in here. And then we need to make sure that this mask is soft in the right areas. Obviously it's quite out of focus on the shirt, so I'm just going to get this and I'm going to make it adjustment layer, mask it for an adjustment layer, and I'm going to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. I'm just going to blur it by quite a bit, so maybe about 9 pixels. And you'll see that's now blurred that quite a bit there. And then I'm going to get the history brush tool. I'm going to go to my history, into the Gaussian blur, and go back one history state. And I'm going to brush this softness in at 100% to those softer areas. Great. I'm actually going to delete this foreground one and replace it with this now. So we're going to command click, select, save selection, foreground. And I'm going to get the foreground selection and I'm going to subtract the top, and that'll give me my skin selection. And I'm going to feather this by a few pixels. Let's just say 1.4 should do it. Also going to remove the hair selection by pressing Command and Option and clicking on the hair selection. And then I'm going to select, save selection, skin, and I'm just going to get the burn tool and I'm going to burn away the bits that we don't want. And then lastly, I'm going to get my foreground and I'm going to remove the hair by pressing Command and Option, and I'm going to remove the skin by pressing Command and Option, and that'll leave me with the top. I want to use that top instead of just clicking on the mask we made of the top because I want that same soft edge that we have in the foreground. I don't want a different edge to the foreground. So I'm going to select, save selection, top, and again I'm going to just go in and clean that up. Great, so we've got our different masks ready and we can now delete that curves 1 mask there. We can now get into our local color corrections. In our local color corrections, we're going to be correcting red spots, bright areas, and any local color issues. Here again, it's helpful to have your overall color grade done so that you can see what areas of the portrait are burning or crunching. Burning being when you're losing detail in your highlights, and crunching being when you're losing detail in your shadows. Apart from that, we're just going to try and make the image look a little bit more cohesive. So I'm going to create a group and I'm going to call it Local CC. And I don't think any areas of this image are burning or crunching. Our grade wasn't too intense, it's a subtle grade. So I'm going to get my foreground group and I'm going to put a group in there and I'm going to call it foreground, and I'm going to create another group and I'm going to call it background, and in this group I'm going to get the foreground mask and I'm going to invert it, and then in the foreground group I'm going to have a skin group. Put that in there, label it skin, great, and I'm going to also have a group for the top, which I'm going to put that mask on. I want the skin group to be above the top group because I'm going to address that first, and then we're ready to get into it. So the first thing I want to do is I can see that the neck here is looking a bit green, so I'm going to go into the skin group and I'm going to go to my adjustments and I'm going to add a little bit of blue and take out some green, and I'm going to invert that, and I'm going to set my flow on my brush back down to a low flow rate, and I'm just going to brush that in, and I don't need to worry about going onto the top because we might actually need to make this effect a bit stronger. I don't need to worry about going onto the top in that skin mask or skin group. And I just want to correct that neck there. Let's take a look what that's doing. Maybe I want to just see what happens if I brighten it just slightly. And I think that is looking a lot better. I also want to get the reds and I want to just adjust them slightly. They're looking a bit too red in some areas. So I'm going to get a hue saturation lever. I'm going to go to the reds and I'm going to pull them all the way to the right so that I can see what I'm doing. Then I'm going to pull the yellows out of the reds by pulling this node here on the right to the left. It starts to reduce which sections of red are being affected, and I think about there is good. So I'm just going to pull that back down to a more reasonable color, and I think let's take a look at about 6. That just calms down the red slightly. Great. I'm going to label this one neck and this one reds. I would usually brush that out, the cheeks, to keep the cheeks red, but I think you can still see enough of the red coming through on the cheeks there, so I'm going to leave it there. And I'm noticing that the nose is looking a bit blue, and this shadow on the side of the nose is also quite blue. So I'm going to get another curve, and I'm going to take the blue out. And I might add some red in. Maybe a little bit less than that. Something like that. And again, I'm just going to brush this in with the low flow. Great. That's looking better to me. So I'm going to label this nose. Oh, we didn't make a hair grip, so we should do that as well. Just firstly label this hair. And then copy it. Command click to get the selection. And let's create a group. And label that hair. And in the hair group, I might just want to see what it looks like to bring a little bit more contrast into the image by darkening that down ever so slightly. I think about there is good. I'm going to just click that on and off to double check that. Yep, I think that's working. And then I want to go to the top and add an adjustment there. And I just want to take a touch of green out of it. Just slightly. Just to bring the colors in line with the rest of the image. And I want to brighten it slightly. Let's see what that's doing. Yes, I think that looks better. So I'm going to leave that there. And I just want to scan the image again and see if there's anything else I want to address with local color corrections. And I think that this blue area here is a bit too blue. So I'm going to go into the background group and I'm going to get a hue saturation layer, and I'm going to go to the blues and I'm going to desaturate them. So about there. I don't want to take out all the color contrast in the image, but I do want to just desaturate those blues slightly. I might actually warm up the background slightly as well. So I'm going to create another curve and just take out a bit of blue and add a bit of red. Not so much red, just a tiny bit, something like that. And I'm just going to call this background CC and blues minus sat. I'm going to check that I like that, and I do. And I think that that's the local color corrections done. I'm just going to take a look and see. I think actually I might want to, that hair is a bit too dark actually. I want to just lighten it a bit to about there, and that looks nice to me. So with this done, your image should now be close to finished. So I'm just going to now double check to finalize the color grading and the dodge and burn and local color corrections that have been applied. And I'm just going to check that I like them all. And I think the color grade is good. I think the local corrections are looking fine. And the same with the retouching. My last thing that I'm going to do is just add a check layer. I want to just check that there's no issues on the background. And I'm going to just add a darkening curve to do that. And I can see that there are none. If you've got the Retouching Academy panel, you can use their solar curve to check. And that'll show you just any issues that will pop up really easily. And I think we're all good. It doesn't look like there's any lens spots or anything in the background. So I'm just going to delete those. I think that's us about done. So when retouching portraits for individual clients where budgets are not high and the turnaround times are very short, you may want to just quickly touch up the most distracting details. But in our example, we've approached this as if it were a portrait that were going to be published in a print magazine, and as if we were working in a retouching studio environment where other team members might have to have picked up our file at some point. Which is why we've created our channel masks, which can be picked up at any point to do amends if amends come later. It's also why we've labeled all our layers. And that's our portrait done. Just a quick, simple retouch with not too much of a heavy hand, but just a subtle overall touch.